Well, welcome to Kramer Talk. Robert Kramer with Kramer ERP here today. We have a great guest, and before I introduce them, let's just talk a little bit why we're here. We're here for the people, talking about what their insights are, what they bring to the community, and their influences, and how we can learn from these people. Today, I have Tirumala Chimpiri. Trying to make sure I pronounce his name very well, but let's talk about why he's here. He joins because one of the biggest misconceptions in ERPs is regarding AI and intelligent automation and analytics and dashboards and things that bring all the data together. But from there, modern ERP platforms usually already have those capabilities. The real challenge is turning all that intelligence into a coordinated action together, which is a huge part of transformation and change management. But he brings ERP 20 plus years of professional dedication, working with different modernization integrations, automations, large scale finance and HCM systems. He's worked in centers on translating ERP modernizations into reliable executions. He joins me to talk and focus on all of that. But one of the things is CAIP-HE, which is CAP. I guess you say it. HE is a platform that executes across the systems, is a framework together, is what I was talking about, is something that works together from an ERP perspective. Tiru, how are you today? Tell me a little bit about what we're going to talk about, because I think that this is probably new to a lot of the audiences. You saw some of the things that I wrote, because I did write about it. I was intrigued in how the CAIP-HE framework comes in and what it stands for before we get into yourself a little bit. But it stands for cognitive automation, advanced analytics, integration and interoperability and personalization. And it's one of those things where when those capabilities work together, things change. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how are you doing today?
Hi, good morning, Rob. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Uh, so I have over nearly my entire experience is into the people soft Oracle ERP experience, and I have mainly focus on the ERP as well as enterprise technology. I have over 20 years of experience into the enterprise technology. And my entire focus is on basically into the ERP systems that includes HCM, financial supply management, EPM, reporting, analytics, automation and interfaces. And also my focus has been on ERP implementations, upgrades, as well as modernization, as well as the reporting.
So what's interesting is ERP modernization is a big deal, and most of them fail for many different reasons. And there's a lot of it could be like the decision flow, and that's what we've talked about, closing the gap between intelligence to action gap, right? So you've worked within the ERP world for 20 years. I've done it for 30 years, and it's kind of the same. The mountain doesn't gotten any smaller or any bigger to climb to execute, right? But there's more tools out there. You have AI, and data now has become a bigger deal, where it was always there, but it was a system of record. We never really used it as much as we're talking about it today. And so if you have an older system, the data is probably not as at the quality level, but it's on the horizon that you're working on it. So you've worked in ERP for 2 decades. How has ERP modernization, how's the conversation changed over that time period? Has it changed, or you see it? What are you seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I see that like the ERP, the modernization conversion change has a lot. So initially, earlier, the ERP is focused on basically whether the ERP system is it's a system of records, right?
Yep.
So whether the system is capturing the transactions, whether is the reporting happening, modules are there, and it's whether controls are there, and it has been reporting what is supposed to do. And merely the focus was basically when you the successfully go live, that is what the success we will call it. But now if you look at the present, right, so the conversation of modernization is totally changed. So many organizations are investing heavily on the ERP modernizations, like they are improving their analytics, dashboards, automations. Now, adding the more AI into it, right? So now the conversation changed from like, and also the organizations are expecting more out of the ERP, right? Whether the ERP is capability of producing the faster decisions, whether they are able to help them to take the decision faster, right? So
Mhm.
this is what exactly I see the change between now and then, from the system of records to system of intelligence and execution, right? Decision making.
So,
So that is exactly I see that.
so with these organizations, they want to modernize, they want to improve the reporting, all the things that you talked about, but they're struggling to improve that execution. What's happening? Like, where's the ball dropping that they feel that the execution is lagging?
Yeah, so definitely. So when they are when the organization are implementing the modernizations, they are definitely adding more the dashboards, workflows, as well as interfaces and everything to it. But what happens is that, right, so adding more modernization may not be helpful for them always. For example, what happens, right? So the intelligence, ERP intelligence always been there, right? But whether the intelligence is properly being translated to the decision and the execution, right? That is where exactly the gap is coming up, right?
Big deal.
That is where exactly is the big deal for the things. So this is exactly, I call it as a structural gap that I have introduced in my ERP article. So that is the ERP intelligence to the gap, actually. So that is what I defined. So the CIP framework is where exactly it helps for the leaders to look at the what exactly the structural gaps, and they can see these gaps and how to fix that, right? So that is exactly is the um,
And what we'll do is I'll in the show notes we'll link your article to that so we have that in there. But and I've written an article too, so all the viewers can see these details because we're going to get into this a little bit deeper here, which is great. Which we're kind of just setting it up now. So just a couple more questions before we really get into the CAP information. But so, what is the intelligence to action gap that CIOs should look out for? Because what are they? You, I mean, you just mentioned a few of them. What we go through these big transformations, and the CIOs are they're missing something. But you said intelligence to action gap. But like, what do we specifically need to be paying attention to these in these transformations?
Yeah, definitely. So I define the ERP intelligence to action gap is very simply. So it is defined like, what I defined is that it's the gap between knowing something and acting on it effectively, right? So many ERP organizations are having ERP data, dashboards, analytics, and now AI, generate a recommendation, but visibility does not automatically create the action, right? So the gap appears when insights is available, but the decision path is unclear. So it appears when the system shows a risk, but no clear pathway, and who owns it, who act on it, that is not defined. So this is exactly the main important for the CIOs and the ERP leaders, because modernization often justified by the decisions and the faster responses, but insight to the decision and execution, if it is not defined, so what it really matters is that they are just adding the technology layer to it, but there is no operational aspect improving it actually. So this is exactly I wanted to make it clear. So it is helpful for the CIOs and ERP leaders to look at the system to see that it is structurally aligned and there is a clear insight to the execution and decision is connected.
So, okay, so great stuff, and I think we can go right into, you developed the CAIP-HE as a leadership reference framework, and when I came across it, I was like, this is pretty interesting. And a lot of my peers, they hear me talk about change management, they think I maybe talk about it too much, and you probably talk about it a lot too, but it's
Yeah.
we talk about it because it's not done correctly. And there's a gap that we're going to talk about in a second, but it's kind of like all over the board. Change management is about the framework, it's about the mindset, it's about the people, it's about the processes. It's not necessarily about the technology, it's about the organization. So as you talk about it, introduce us to what it is and what problems or problems you're trying to address with it. So tell us what it is, what where it came from, and what your intentions are with it, and then we'll get into some
Yeah.
other details about it.
Yeah, sure. CIP framework came from practical problems I keep seeing in the ERP centered environments. So this is the consistently the problem that existed in ERP. So the framework has been defined as a platform agnostic, like whether it is any kind of PeopleSoft ERP, Oracle ERP, or any other ERP, but the same problem existed, right? Or you take any kind of uh, uh, the industry, right? Whether it is higher education or it is a supply chain or finance, but the same problem exists, right? So what happens is that, right, so organizations are keep modernizing their platforms, they are improving the dashboards, they're building integrations, and they are modernizing, introducing a lot of automation and AI also they are in adding it, right? But the real business disruption happen when it happens, the action still be slow, right? So it is not because of there is no intelligence or insights exist, but the decision ownership, workflow design and the governance are not always connected, right? This is the gap, I call it as a ERP intelligence gap. So the purpose is to help the leaders and evaluate whether the automation, analytics, integration, personalization, interoperability connected tightly so that the accountable and execution is properly executed, right? So CAIP HE looks at the four connected dimensions, right? So it has the cognitive automation, advanced analytics, integration and interoperability, personalization. When all these things are connected together, it will be very clear, and it will be it will try to help organizations to see where the gaps existed, right? And also I want to make a little bit clear about the CAIP. CAIP is it's not a product, it's not a architecture, vendor architecture, it's not a leadership sorry, it's not an implementation methodology. It is a, leadership reference framework, so that like leadership can always refer this one and ask meaningful questions to identify the gaps.
Mhm.
And they can always ask questions such as whether the insights are there, where the insights are generated, are there any clear ownership is there, who can be able to take it forward, who can be act on it, and there are clear governance is there, and what is the workflows and automation, everything.
Right. So you came up with the framework, and how do you what do you suggest the ERP leaders when they think about analytics, automation, integrations, interoperability, and personalization? as connected capabilities rather than separate initiatives. Because most of these leaders think of these as separate and they want to do them separated.
Yeah.
But you're saying when you connect them, then that framework allows for more of an aptitude to work together in almost like a practical way of working where things sync up a little bit better. I don't know if do you ski at all? Or if you bike or if you do anything that's like when you hit in a certain spot, like if you bike and you go faster, or you ski,
Yes.
you have the groove and you're just going to go quicker, or is this like what's related to something that's not business? So like, when you ski, you just sometimes you're not doing anything more, but your groove is in sync. So is this a framework when it's all in sync, it makes more sense? Or give me something that the ERP leaders can understand a little bit better, because what's box it up for them.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, thank you. And this is a very good question, because people, and the in ERP leaders, like they think that we have these capabilities already there. Like what is the need, right? Why they need to be connected, as a seen as a one connected flow, right? So. Uh, from the framework perspective, right? So this is what I wanted to say, right? So ERP leaders should see these four capabilities, right, as a connected flow. So for example, like if you see, analytics help to identify what is happening. So automation helps move repeatable actions forward. Integration and interoperability help information move across the systems, connected systems and boundaries. Personalization helps the right person see the right information at the right time, right? Each capability is useful by itself and meaningful, but real value comes when they work together, right? So for example, like treat this one, right? Analytics may identify a risk, but if the workflow is not connected, nothing happens, right? Likewise, automation may speed up a process, but if the data is wrong, the speeding up, wrong outcome. So personalization may improve user experience. If people are working from a different versions of the truth, alignment may become more difficult.
Yep.
So the question is not only whether the organization has these four capabilities, but the question is whether they are connected, right? So are they helping insights move into the decision making? Are they helping decisions to move towards the final executions? This is why CAIP useful as a structural lens to connected all these four capabilities into a single one as a connected flow.
Yep.
And yeah.
So with that, I'm assuming AI is a help with this and ERP modernization, obviously. But when when you look at this, where does AI fall short from a governance, decision ownership, execution paths? I guess with and without CAIP.
Yeah. Sure. So ERP and AI is the happening right now, right? So everybody is talking about ERP modernization as well as adding AI to it, right? So definitely, like AI can help modernization in many ways. So it can identify the patterns, it can generate more insights, more recommendations. It surfaces the risk earlier, and it supports the forecasting, it detect anomalies, right? And it also assists the users. Those values, these are all very capabilities, and they're very helpful. But AI does not automatically solve execution problems, right?
Yep.
So for example, if governance is unclear, AI may produce recommendations without accountability. And at the same time, if decision ownership is unclear, alerts may not lead to the right action. So at the and workflows are fragmented, AI may accelerate a broken process.
Yep.
If data definitions are inconsistent, AI may create more confusion. So I see AI as a powerful accelerator, but not replacing meant for the operational intelligence, right? Discipline, rather, right? So organizations still need to ask basic questions. So who owns the decision? Where human judgment is required, and also how action is audited.
Yep.
So AI value is proven when the recommendation can move into a governance workflow. That is why I connect AI back to the intelligence to the action gap.
Yep.
So yeah. So and to summarize, AI can increase the intelligence, but organizations still need a structural, decision for the meaningful action, right?
So let's I got one more question. We'll wrap up with this. So first of all, how do companies get started with this? Like how do they know what to do? Do you have a link that I can put in the show notes that shows them? And what advice would you give any of these technology leaders that are doing a modernization and they want to produce a better operational value with what they're doing from a transformation of ERP?
Yeah, sure. So my first advice is to treat ERP modernization as operating model change, not treating that as a technology upgrade. Upgrade. So the platform is also important, but the value comes from how the people process data, workflow, governance, and accountability work through the platform, right? The second one is that define decision ownership early in the stage of modernization. Leaders should know who owns the data, who owns the insight, who owns the decision, and who owns the execution. So that decision clearly early, and that helps a lot. So the third one is that design integrations and the data flow carefully, because trusted information is the foundation for the user's confidence. Otherwise users will be going for workarounds, right? So and the fourth one is that do not evaluate automation or AI as isolation, because if AI helps, but it also bring up the structural problems and it amplify the issues, right? The fifth one, pay close attention to the after go live. That is when you learn users trust the system, whether the reports are reliable, whether the workarounds are happening, and whether the process is actually improving, right?
Good
So
point.
yeah, yeah. So implementation success and operational values are not the same thing. So my overall advice is simple: look beyond implementation success. That's where organization can see the benefits after their migration, as modernization, as well as the AI.
What an
Uh,
interesting subject. So thank you for joining today. And for all those listening, we'll have show notes with some of the links as I discussed. Tiru, thank you for joining Robert Kramer with KramerTALK, Kramer ERP. Been a great episode, and look forward to talking and catching up sometime soon. And thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. All the best.